Hey everyone, it's Andrew. Welcome to Atomo. It is April 9th, almost going to be April 10th by the time I get this video out. I have been watching a video of Bo Reflect of the Legion of Men channel commenting on some thoughts from a Jacob Whelan. I will put the link to Bo's channel into the description. Go ahead and give his video a watch. I'm not going to play through the video and react on the reaction. I am going to react on it, but I took some notes off of the Jacob video. What really prompted me to talk about this one is I felt when Jacob was giving his points, I found him incredibly black pilled. So here's my position on why I'm producing this video. If there is someone out there, most likely a man, who is contemplating marriage for the purpose of raising a family, and you listen to some of the comments that Jacob is making, I'd like you to put up some level of insulation against perhaps what Jacob's talking about and the thoughts that he's putting forward, because he's in my opinion he's playing back some tropes that for those of you who watch this channel, you most likely understand the city of Rome. The world is too overpopulated. They want to get rid of us because, hey, we are carbon and carbon is bad, and like all that black pill stuff. We have to raise ourselves above this. And while I was listening to the video, I was getting a sense that Jacob is. Let me reverse here. If you think about regret minimization, I used to work at Amazon, and Jeff Bezos, one of the things that I liked that he always put forward is he's always running in a regret minimization framework. And what does that mean? He doesn't want to be making decisions or not taking action that's going to maximize the amount of regret that he is going to have in the future. So I wanted to bring this forward that in the event that there is some man who is watching this and saying, yeah, Jacob, you're right. Bo, you're right. That's it. I give up. I throw in the towel. I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have a family. Then pause for a moment and consider some of the points that Jacob is making. And how do I put this? Kind of man up to those points. If you really want a family, that's a part of being a man in today's culture is you need to put the work in there. You need to understand what's happening in our culture and determining what interventions or insulation, how you are going to protect your family from that as a man in today's society. I speak as a father of two children, married for over 15 years to a woman from Thailand. And it's working out decently. We have our troubles like any other couple would have. We work through them. And it's about getting our children across the finish line and doing our best that we can do, carving out our existence today and not falling into a pit of black pills and despair. So with that out of the way, um, Jacob has some points in the video, and I took some notes here while listening to the video. Jacob, hats off to him. He's had a successful life. Now he's reached 40. Looks like he's built a house. He is successful. He's built up the security that he wanted. He's reached his point. He's got seemingly what he wants. But as I go through the video and listen to him, it almost feels like he's settling into a state where he's not going to have family because there are certain things that he feels that's outside of his control. I can't think for him. I can only put some counterpoints out there and maybe add some thoughts to the conversation so that, again, as I said, anybody who's listening to this doesn't fall into kind of the set of black pills that he's putting forward. So awesome for him to get to where he's at in life. So, reasons for not bringing a family into this world. He brought up concerns about education and indoctrination that's happening in the schools. Well, yes, in some states, I'm in Canada, we have our set of problems. We have some diversity thing in BC called Sochi 123. And the best thing to do, given that I have kids, is to talk to them. Kids are little humans. They, for the most part, they'll listen to you as the parent. And my son, as I bring up things, like if I were to bring up, for example, I think that Trump and the tariffs are doing what Trump needs it to do. And my son would be like, well, what do you mean? He's 8 and he's already engaging with me on that. And I try to summarize my thinking to him. He doesn't quite always understand. He's 8, so he's not going to understand the technicalities of markets, tariffs, how that works on, narrow margin basis point funds that are highly leveraged that could blow up given the volatility of tariffs, and that's like a completely other video. But they have the capacity to understand. And if you are talking with your kids and you are bringing up points and you're giving them the information as best as you can understand that information, and it does take some time and effort to understand this, but again, that's what we do as men, as protectors of the family, is to understand the information out there, to understand what psyops are out there running, what information's out there running, and how does that work to your value system. Okay, so could kids be indoctrinated in the public school? It's possible, and it also depends on how you want to approach it. I personally am a part of the Parents Advisory Council for the school. So if there are crazy things, put that into kind of the scare quotes, crazy things that I don't approve of, then I have some limited say in that by being on the Parents Council. And of course, I hear what's coming up and I'm connected with what's happening in the school, and I can opt to take my kids out of the school if there's something happening that does not align with our value system. He brought up a point on homeschooling, saying if you homeschool, then your kids are going to miss out on social interactions. I thought this before, and then someone gave me a shake. It's like, we've been raising our kids. You have to go back and think about, how did the early humans raise their kids? Did they have institutionalized schools? No. You brought them together in community, either with the family or with elders, and the kids helped by support of the elders. They all came together to help raise the kids. In the homeschooling sense, well, you have to think about kids that, let me put it in this way, in some areas of the world where they don't have access to school, they just have mom and dad. Do they grow up to be well adjusted? Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, they can. They can go outside, they can play with each other, they can play with other kids in the village. They can go and they can interact with the shopkeepers. Like, we have such an anxious society nowadays. That's a part of it, is taking the anxiety out. Again, that's what we do as the men of the family, is we help protect. And one way of doing that is you put your kids out there into the world for them to potentially fail, but in a way that like, give your kid some money, have your kid go into the store when your kid is 5 years old and go and find some things that they want, and they can buy them and then come out of the store and say, hey, I bought this stuff. There are things that you can do to take control of that situation. So are your kids going to be maladjusted and antisocial if they go through homeschooling? No. Look at the record of everything that's happened in human history. Other things that he brings up. He views the world's direction as chaotic, complicating the idea of raising the children. And I think there are some, with Jacob specifically, some buttons that have been installed. Now, what do I mean by that? Is by virtue of how we grow up, what our value systems are, if there's any trauma, if you're watching certain, news, events, and people in your family or in your circles are speaking in particular ways, that installs buttons. I'll put my rabbit ear quotes here. And what do we mean by installing that button is now you have certain elements within your thought process that get placed there that are potential triggers. So if your family is quite liberal growing up, then the idea of things that deviate from traditional norms of maybe father-mother homes, but somebody grew up in a father-father home, for example, well, then that imprinting is going to be placed onto those kids. Now, I'm using this just kind of as an example and not advocating for or against any way that people want to raise their families, just for the sake of playing nice with the platform. Wink, wink. So you have to consider how people had those buttons installed, and then when you're pushing against those buttons, people are going to react in specific ways. Just look at the latest Tesla takedown that's happened. Those are people reacting based on stuff that's been kind of installed into their wetware. And again, us as critical thinkers have to take a look at that and understand and defend against that installation that's happening. Jacob also brings up risks of marriage and divorce. Yes, marriage and divorce, especially for us men, is a big, big topic. And if the marriage does not go well, that could be financial ruin for the man. If you're watching Bo's channel, he's gone videos upon videos. There's hours and hours of content of him explaining about vetting, looking for the red flags, making sure that you are clear on what it is that you're walking into. And even then, in the United States at least, you have the ability to create contractual agreements going into the marriage. It's called a prenup. That can, if Jacob's built this great house, he can build a prenup around securing those assets and maybe setting a state of, if a divorce were to happen, here's what you can do. There's a story on Orion Taraban. He's Psych Hacks. He talks about a prenup where if the man and the woman were to break up, then the woman gets a certain amount of money, like flat per month. The guy was extraordinarily rich. However, there is a catch. For the amount of pounds that the woman weighs over the time where they got married, that amount goes down. It's a contract. As Orion mentioned in the video, it is a contract. And contract law is contract law in the United States of America. So there are things that the other side can do to mitigate that, like maybe throw on the pounds before the marriage in order to get the weight up and then maybe take it off later. But anyhow, I don't want to digress too much down that. It's a contract, and there are things that you can potentially do in order to mitigate those risks. Again, it's regret minimization. If you really want the family, you will find a way to mitigate those risks. He also brings up that he feels that there is an intentional there are forces that are working against the nuclear family. And yeah, that's been around for so long. Uh, you know, it and it has been changing. Yes, you can pull diagrams showing that divorce rates are up. The nuclear family's been breaking down since the 1950s. But that's the other part, is if you want to throw your hands up and say, that's it, I'm done. Yes, the nuclear family is done. They win. And for whoever you want to call that guiding hand that's putting these ideas into play, it just requires the force of people to want to understand that if there is this push against undermining the nuclear family, that there are people, I want to point to myself, that are working on the other side to say, no, we're going to keep going with the nuclear family to basically spite the decarbonizationers or the Davos or Evil Corp Central, as I like to call it on this channel, that are working against that. So consider that. If you're feeling like the nuclear family is getting knocked down a few notches, well, then it's up to you to go and prove them otherwise. Social media fuels shiny object syndrome, where people constantly seek better options. Well, you can vet for that. You can check and see if somebody is shiny object, low attention, not focused. Well, take her on a date. Is she looking at her phone all the time? Is she getting anxious or upset? Can she carry a conversation? Is, as Bo mentioned in this video, is the lady helping you with the conversation? Is she a part of the conversation? You can vet these things. You don't need to marry any woman that comes along. You vet, and you vet. Get off of the dating apps. Bo on his channel has showed you many times that the dating apps are a trap. They're not going to help you. They are going to, especially for us men, try to keep you trapped onto the app so that you're paying money and not getting the matches. Go out and actually approach or meet. If you're going to do it online, actually meet people, talk to people, build relationships, and then they may have somebody to hook you up with, and then you can do some online communication back and forth if that's the way to start it. Of course, you always want to get it out to a personal, in-person, one-to-one date as soon as possible. But there's, again, many channels on how to do that. Let's see. Yeah, see, he just suggests that removing expectation of marriage and kids allows for deeper, pressure-free connections in relationships. Yeah, sure, you can abdicate the throne. I mean, if you don't want to put the king's hat on and be the man of the relationship and just put your feet up and say, yeah, I'm done now, go ahead and do it. But again, think about, are you minimizing something that you really want and pushing that aside? Is your dream to have a partner, a family, or a husband, a wife? Let's use that language, and build a family and have a legacy. If you don't go out and do it, it's not going to happen. It's like these women saying the words, hoping something manifests for them. It's like, Sure, you can say the words, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. Or I was having this conversation with someone today. It's like, yeah, yeah, well, there's this speaking, and manifesting, but then next you know it, it's like that joke where people are on the roof of the house. There's a flood. And they say, oh, we're going to pray to God, save us. A boat comes along and says, hey, hop on in. We'll get you out of here. Like, no, no, no. We're praying to God, but God's going to come and save us. So the people in the boat zoom off. Another boat comes. They ask the same thing. People say, no, no, no. We're praying to God. God's going to save us. Water's almost at the top of the house. That's it. They're almost done. They'll need to be swimming soon. Helicopter comes, says, this is it. We got to get out. This is the last ride. Everything's flooded up. And they're like, oh, no, no. God's going to save us. And then eventually those people drown. And the joke is that they're at the pearly gates, and they talk to Saint Peter, and they say, "Well, Saint Peter, well, we prayed to God, and yeah, and it didn't work out." And it's like Saint Peter checks his notes, says, "Well, from what I see here, God sent you two boats and a helicopter." So just some people can't see the opportunities that avail themselves in front because they're choking on black pills so much that when opportunity comes and slaps them in the face, they can no longer see it anymore. They just don't see the path forward. So what I want to put forward here is we lost the ability to path find. This is what men need to do. They need to path find. They need to find a way through all these landmines, all these black pills, all this crap that's going on. And if you want something, you go get that thing. You do what you need to do to go and get that thing. You do the work. You vet. You look for the red flags. When you see them, you say, yeah, no thank you, not for me. I'm moving on. And that's it. Other things that are happening here. Risks in Western marriage. There's a risk in any marriage, not just Western marriage, any marriage. Even other countries' court systems can be biased against you. So if you're having very little luck in the United States and you want to go abroad, you are taking your little luck and then you're layering on somebody else's entire culture and perhaps different language on top of that. So if you have, again, no luck in the West of even getting a 3 or a 4 out of 10, what makes you think you're going to have better luck when you go overseas and you add all the complexities of that different culture into the bag? Okay, for myself personally, I learned to read Thai, I learned to write Thai, I learned to listen to Thai, uh, read, write, speak, listen. You have to do all of that if you're looking for somebody from a different culture. Learn the language. That's my recommendation. That's going to take time. That's going to take effort. And if you put in that time and effort, the rewards coming back from that are quite positive. The other thing that it allows you to do is they cannot gossip about you. And since I'm involved in Thai society, Thais like to gossip. And if you understand the language, then you can kind of raise your eyebrow when you're hearing something. I say, "Oh, really? Yeah." And then you can bust them on that. Say, "Oh yeah, I heard. Okay, I heard this about it. You're calling me fat, or you're saying, okay, this guy's a little bit of dumb, or things like that." You hear little things, and then you can put up the red flag and say, "Oh yeah, this person's kind of dissing me right away." Not meeting up to their particular standards because there's something that I need to work on that I'm actively working on that perhaps, yeah, okay, cool, you're pointing it out, but if it's a breaker and you're not telling me up the front of my face, and I know the language and I can hear the actual real conversation, great. I can call the red flag and move on. And for myself, yeah, I had to go through quite a number of women and vetting them in order to get to the one that I married. It wasn't a one and done. It was maybe dozens of the same thing. That's why I'm bringing this up. Because you say things, they'll say things in their language. They don't realize that I can completely understand and read and hear. And yeah, then I can make decisions from there. Not all Western women are bad. The thing is, the ones that are really, really good and high value get taken off the shelf very early. So even with this gentleman, Jacob, he may have to go and look around maybe the 25, 26, 27 age range and see if there's somebody there. I used to have a rule, 25 or under. I have to be very, very careful. So I set my standard around 25 to about 28, 29. Met my wife when she was 28 because I was in my early 30s, and that worked out fine. Okay. So he talked about U.S. schools and homeschooling. Bo brings up a really good point about where do you want to raise the family? And raising a family in a country like Thailand is problematic if you want them to have a solid Western education. Either one, you're going to be paying a lot for it. You're going to be paying so much that the amount of money that you're saving by, if you are taking Western dollars and converting it to Thai baht or a Philippine peso or Vietnamese dong, then yes, you're going to be ahead of the curve there. But once you need to factor in international school for your kids, that can range from $60,000 a year to $100,000 US dollars a year. That changes the calculus really fast. So Bo brought up in his points that he's thinking of potentially raising a family and potentially going to the USA, because your infrastructure there and the ability for your kids to get ahead are much greater than in most countries of the world. You might have to go to, your other option might be going to a European country, but with things that, if you're watching my channel, Europe is a high risk play at this point in time, unless you have so much money that you can kind of buy yourself out of some of the problems that are about to hit Europe financially. Financial war going on. I might talk about it later on the channel. But yeah, so Bo is right. The USA, I would say Canada to an effect, but again, Canada has its set of problems. It's a little more on the left socially than the USA. Finding a good, possibly red state in the USA can be like a moderate red state, can be an option for. Yeah. So there's a lot of detailing. I can get into that, but I'm going to try to keep this short. But yes, raising a family in Canada, USA, there's a lot of infrastructure there to help support. Just find a community that fits your value system. Because if you go out maybe to Portland, Oregon on the West Coast, you're going to get woke stuff. But if you go to maybe a place like Boise, Idaho, then you're not going to get as much of that. But again, you have to research each of the states, or in Canada, you have to research each of the province and find out what their leanings are and potential what might the future look like if the political system changes. Um, yeah, there's social media, there's adult entertainment sites, there's maybe OnlyFans and stuff that rewire the brains. Jacob brings that up. The other part that you have to look at is with all that going on in the erosion of values, there's also a bit of a renaissance happening with kids that understand that this is happening, and even parents now that are understanding that this is happening, and they're going back to the more traditional ways of building up values by perhaps bringing your kids to church, getting involved in a church family. Hopefully that's not flying rainbow flags and all that other stuff. You have to keep an eye out for that. Again, you look for the flags, and if the flags have a lot of little funky colors on it, and it's same as a red flag, could be even worse. So you have to make that judgment call. Again, you're the man of this family. You're the one in charge. You have to make choices. Myself personally, I got some Bibles, and my son picks them up without me prompting and reads through them. I have an illustrated children's one he can read through. I can talk to him about the stories. So, and that's part of what I do as my research. I do listen to Jordan Peterson's biblical series. He's got a very good way of explaining it that I've never heard when I was going through church in my early years. That now that's given me the ability to comment on those erosion of moral values and take the way that Jordan looks at it, and I'm able to provide that guidance to my son, who's the older one at this point. So I think in closing here, don't give up on marriage if that's something that you want to do. There's a lot of talk in the manosphere, red pill, men's advice sites that are saying, marriage is primarily for if you're bringing kids into the world, you need that stable foundation. That's probably your best reason for getting married. But if you're just maybe you're like Jacob and you said, no, it's not for me, I don't want it, I'm not going to raise a family. If that's the choice that you're landing on, then there are ways to kind of get a girlfriend experience, or do something and then kind of walk away from it. But part of that that I have concerns about is potentially, if you're thinking about doing that, well, that person is someone's daughter, and if you do a catch release program, you're releasing those people back into the dating pool. And if that starts happening, then what happens with women is they get stuck on their highest settings. So you find a young lady, you're in your 40s, maybe your 50s, you find a woman in her 20s, you have no intention of marrying her, but hey, you give her a good time, you then alpha widow her, drop her back into the dating pool, and she now is less mate compatible to other men. You can think, yeah, so what for them? They're just a bunch of simps. I'm the alpha. But you have to take a look at this and understand that if you're going to put some damage back into the dating pool, then that helps to precipitate all these black pills that Jacob has been chewing on. So we create the culture that if we throw our garbage away onto the streets, someone else has to contend with that. And if we're not keeping things as clean as possible, even in our relationships, then someone else might suffer for that. And as they suffer for that, they might drag everybody down. So there's some food for thought. Again, yeah, thanks for your attention with this. Wanted to go a little bit long on this, but hopefully there's something that you pulled out of this. Until next time, see ya.